everyone. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you this morning. And to be fair, as in an effort of full disclosure here in the morning, I'm actually an accidental Wiki user. I came here, this is my first year teaching at BC. I come in to teach the information systems class here at the Carroll School of Management. And I say, okay, we got to use some of the technologies that the students are very familiar with. And I started using Facebook. And the students really, how many people in here are familiar with Facebook? Okay, so a good portion of you. We started using Facebook as a part of the class, and they took to it, the students took to it so well, and were able to create ways of collaborating that I had not, using these tools, that I had not foreseen before. That the evolution of these tools in the context of my class continued to change over the course of this year. The course I teach is MIO 21, Computers in Management. It's the first class that freshmen in the business school receive. And the advantage is it's a half of a class. It's a module that's taught in conjunction with one of the professors in computer science. And so I've taught this class now 4 to 5 times over the course of this year, and each of the different sessions has changed in ways that were a little bit different than the course that had gone before, because we continue to learn how to use these tools. And I titled the presentation Classroom 2.0, Using Collaborative Technologies for Teaching in MIO 21, mainly because what we started with was Facebooks and Wikis, and we've really gone way beyond that at this point. And so we're going to talk about how this evolution has taken place, and more importantly, what type of learning does it enhance for the students, and how does it decrease my workload as a professor to create more value-added interactions with the students rather than administrator stuff. So just to pique your interest a little bit, I thought I'd start with a bit of a video. How many people in here have heard of the concept of Web 2.0? Who is bold enough to give a brief definition of Web 2.0? See, some very Web 1.0 thing for me to say. Here it is. And basically, it's a very subtle but important shift in internet technologies from a one-way to a two-way interaction. What used to be is one would publish stuff on the web, and people would come and read it, and the technologies now enable all sorts of interactions between information and people that were not previously possible on the internet. It's fairly, again, subtle but important development in the past really year or so. And I think rather than me sitting up here and sort of explaining exactly what Web 2.0 is, this video I found does a pretty good job of it in about 4 minutes and 31 seconds. So we'll kick back and watch a little bit of a video, assuming I can. stream of consciousness presentation of Web 2.0, and I just got to figure out how to get it off the screen now. Okay, the switch from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0 has a number of different characteristics. I'm going to show you some examples of the types of switches and the types of evolutions that are changing in the tools that are available on the web. So we have Web 1.0 on the left and Web 2.0 on the right. Web 1.0 is about content management, getting information to a source, organizing it, and then presenting it to people. I'm not sure why that. There's supposed to be a blank up there that talks about collaboration. That we've gone from content management, where we put the information up, we organize it in a particular way, then we release it to people, to collaboration, where we're all working together to create what information we are going to use, how it is going to be organized, and how we're going to use it. It goes from publishing to participation, from websites to blogs, from email to Facebook. How many professors in here, how many are professors or teaching at some school? How many of you use email? How many of you use Facebook? Okay, 3. How many of your students do you think use email to communicate with their friends? Not many. What are they using? Facebook or instant messaging. And so, I come across faculty who think that, we're using email, we're very digital, and that's very Web 1.0. And it's good. I mean, the freshmen do deign to communicate with us on that platform, but they're speaking with us in ways that we are comfortable with. We are not going to meet them in their area. For instance, when I was teaching a student, one of my students this past semester, we had a mix-up with one of his assignments, and I sent him 3 emails saying, look, there's a problem with this assignment, get back with me. Sent him 1 Facebook message, he returned my message in about 5 minutes. So that's where they live. I know better now to make changes at the last minute. So we have now, Web 1.0 is about MP3, about downloading images or downloading sound files from the web, music. Well, now what we're seeing developing is podcasts. Not only downloading audio files from the web, but then uploading it as well to share to others. This can be in the form of music downloads and uploads through semi-legal means. They can be through one of my colleagues, John Gallagher, in the IS department, podcasts his lectures. So he records his lectures, uploads it to iTunes, so all of his students that missed it or from previous semesters or beyond can go and download his lectures. Switching from just the download to the upload as well. We've gone from directories like Yahoo that categorize information in particular ways to folksonomies. Anybody heard the term folksonomy before? One gentleman in the back. And what folksonomies are is basically a user-generated organizational structure. What we have is a bunch of documents, a bunch of information. And what people do is as they read and as they consume this information, they put what are called tags on them. And these tags are like, oh, this article is about Web 2.0. This article is about Netflix. This article is about Boston College. And we create a taxonomy of subjects that this article relates to, but it's not done in a very structured way. It's students, it's users, it's readers as they go creating their own organization and categorization scheme to help understand their knowledge and organize their knowledge. And what makes Web 2.0 more powerful is then we can share those with one another. We're going to look at how we're using that very thing in my class. OPhoto. What OPhoto, anybody heard of OPhoto? What was OPhoto?
You would send your digital images online in order of prints.
Okay, yes, upload your images and they would send you prints back. What's happening now? Flickr. What is Flickr? Very good. Flickr and YouTube. Not only are we uploading, but we're using these websites to share our images. We don't download them, we don't print them off, we put them up and share them with whoever wants to look at it. There's a great story after the London Underground bombing that people who were present on the trains took their cell phones, their camera-enabled cell phones, and took pictures of the event as it was happening. Their phones were wirelessly connected to Flickr, which is a Yahoo service. They uploaded it from the tunnels to Flickr. The editors, which were a bunch of volunteers, picked out the best pictures, and these London Underground bombings from the scene were on the front page of Yahoo News within minutes after the London Underground bombings actually happened. Something that would be impossible through traditional web or communication technologies. We think about Web 1.0 as chat rooms. We all get together, we type out our stuff, we have a conversation thread. Web 2.0 is about Second Life and metaverses. Anybody heard of Second Life or World of Warcraft? Okay, so that's at least in the public consciousness. Where you have avatars that walk around virtual worlds. I'm not sure that's quite there yet, but we're getting there. Web 1.0 is about Britannica Online, putting up information, reputable information, so that people can access this knowledge online. What's the Web 2.0 version of this? Wikipedia. So this is what we have happening, and then now I bet if I press the button, my collaborative, nope, it just disappeared. So this is sort of where we see some practical examples of where we see this evolution happening from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0. Andrew McAfee over at Harvard said there are some characteristics that characterize what he calls Enterprise 2.0, which I have called Classroom 2.0, and we'll just talk about Web 2.0. But if you have anything, you just slap 2.0 on it now. It's Web 2.0 involves search technologies. Think Google. You can go to a site, search, and these tools and these algorithms will search the site to pull up the information that you're interested in. They involve links, where users can go in and identify what's important, say, hey, I want to tag this so that you'll go to my site over here. This happens both in blogs and in wikis and in other formats as well. Authoring. Web 2.0 is all about user-created content. Doritos. Anybody watch the Super Bowl this year? What was special about the Doritos commercial? It was made by a volunteer. It won a contest. People went out and said, I'm going to make a commercial, and I would argue at least one of those was the best commercial on the Super Bowl at that point. So how do we get amateurs and how do we get users to create content? Tags, as we talked about, this user-created organization. What does this information mean? Extensions, which is an automated organization type, and signals, a high-level view. One thing that I hope you walk away from this that I've had to learn is when using Web 2.0 in education, you have to change, I have had to change the way I interact with students because it creates so much information. My students, when you'll see the wiki in a little bit, on average make 10-page edits and 100-page views every week. So if I have 100 students making 10 edits every week, that's 1,000 changes every week that I got to pay attention to. If I'm trying to grade this and evaluate this in a typical way, I'm dead. I mean, there's no way I can keep up with that time. But there are tools to help synthesize this so I can take a look at the high-level interactions that are going on and know where I need to pay attention. And of course, as all good academics, Mr. McAfee has this into an anagram, slates. So if you need the mnemonic, if you're on the test later, remember slates and go from there. So what happened was I started using a wiki. A wiki is defined as a website that anybody can edit. It's really not that complex. It sounds fancy, it sounds cool. That's very intentional from us in the Information Systems Department. The truth is, it's actually a fairly user-friendly piece of technology. How many people have seen Wikipedia, have visited it? Okay, so you're familiar with the concept of a wiki. Information is there, any user can come up and change the information, and then that change takes place on the website. Well, one thing about a wiki is you can engineer it to have different privacy settings. And this is important because one wiki is not the same as another wiki. They use different types of controls and privacies for different purposes. Public wiki is a wiki that anyone can view and edit. This is the old model of Wikipedia. Basically, if you want to make a change, you just go click, I want to make a change, fiddle with whatever you want, and then you're done and that change is made. What's the problem with a public wiki that anybody can view and edit? Okay, authority is one.
No way to check that it's correct.
No way to check that it's current. More to the point is when we have the cranks out there, we don't have any idea who they are, and we can't keep the good contributors and get rid of the bad contributors. And that's what Wikipedia was running into. If anybody could do it, then how do we know who we want to keep, who's really valuing this, and who's just vandalizing it? So the second type of wiki is a registered wiki, and this is where Wikipedia is now. That if anybody can view it. If you want to go look at an entry on Wikipedia, anybody can go to the Boston College section on Wikipedia. But if you want to edit the Boston College section, you need to be a registered user of Wikipedia. And they do this so that they can see who are the most valuable contributors, which of the contributors tend to develop authority, reliability, reputation, and which ones tend to be the troublemakers, pushing particular agendas. And they can track this and they can keep records of this so they can give different privileges to different types of users. Then there's a private wiki. Anyone can view, but you must be invited to register or edit. This is what my class uses. That you can go and visit my wiki, which we'll see in a second, so I'll put that up in a second. But only my students currently enrolled in the class can actually make changes to what's going on. This is their wiki. They need to have the ownership over it. And then finally, closed. That Professor Gallagher, John Gallagher, uses wikis for his tech trick, which is sort of a mini in the country foreign study. And they use it to generate information about their stops for student projects, and only members of his trip can see this because it has proprietary information on companies, et cetera, et cetera. So, although it's a very simple concept, a website where anybody can go in and edit pages, we have a number of different ways to use it. And the best solution, of course, is to combine all of these. Where you need openness, allow it to be open. When you need privacy, close it down. And the wikis and the Web 2.0 tools at this point give you the power to do this. So let's look. I love this. I was teaching this past semester. No, it's fall. And my students come in. We're just getting ready to talk about Wikipedia in class. And on the front page of the BC Heights that day was the headline, BC professors agree, Wikipedia not so reliable. So what I did was said, read this article and we will talk about it 10 minutes into class. And let's look at the difference, and I won't ask you ahead of time whether you think Wikipedia is reliable or not. I will simply make my case for the appropriateness of something, a tool like Wikipedia. So let's look. Who can edit Wikipedia in Britannica? Who can edit Wikipedia? Anybody. All volunteers. Who edits Encyclopedia Britannica? Smart people. Paid experts, sometimes Nobel Prize winners. I mean, they get the best of the best to edit Britannica. Okay, so we have a bunch of hacks compared to some Nobel Prize winners. Wonder what we're doing here.
That's assuming there's no Nobel Prize winners.
That is, and that Nobel Prize winners aren't hacks in some form. But we are just simplified argument. Cost. Anybody bought an Encyclopedia Britannica at any time in the past 10 years? How much did it cost?
10 years, no.
I've been looking for reliable cost numbers here since I've been doing this lecture for about a year now. Anybody know how much an Encyclopedia Britannica costs? a grade. I think it's more closer to 2. But since nobody said they knew anything, you have to listen to me. And how expensive is Wikipedia? It's free. You don't have to pay anything. And actually, Wikipedia, the Wikipedia Foundation, runs on about $1 million a year. This is a pretty cheap tool. How many entries does Encyclopedia Britannica have? In English, since that's their only language. 70,000 in the print edition, 120,000 in the online edition. How many articles does Wikipedia have? How much? A gazillion. Slightly less. Just in English, 1.7 billion. And I have to keep updating this because it keeps growing every time I do this projection. Versus 120,000 in the online version of Britannica.
But how many of those are redundant on Wikipedia? Because you find that a lot.
Okay, I'll give you half. And that's only English. There's another 4 to 5 million in other languages. Updates. How often is Britannica updated? Yearly. How often is a new set of... Okay, so in terms of years, how often is Wikipedia updated on the spot? I'm actually doing a research project now where I'm watching the Wikipedia entry to the Virginia Tech shooting and how it evolves over the day and how it really becomes a news source. So we have immediate updates. Now the kicker. The gripe about Wikipedia is what? How do we know it's accurate? The journal Nature did a comparison, and this is, this is Nature. This is a fairly reliable journal for us academics, comparing Wikipedia and Britannica. How did they find they fared against one another in terms of accuracy?
About the same.
About the same. Oh, I forgot. Founded 1768, 2001. Errors about a little less than 4 per entry for Wikipedia, a little more than 3 per entry for Britannica. And of course, there's been Britannica wrote a press release, and Nature wrote a press release, and there's, this is not without its controversy. And some of the reasons for this difference is it could be Britannica is just out of date. But wrong is wrong. And so all this is to say is, do we BC professors agree Wikipedia is not so reliable? I'm not sure I agree. But what I tell my students is this. This is I have this article that you may want to read. The kid's okay and so's the old man. Wikipedia is not necessarily heads and shoulders above Britannica, nor is Britannica heads and shoulders above Wikipedia. They both have their values. But if you are a student in my class, you better not cite either one of them when doing a research paper. Because it's not about whether Wikipedia is a valuable source of information. Clearly it is. I can find information quickly, reliably, freely, but on Wikipedia, but if I'm writing an academic paper, you better believe I'm going to back up my sources and double check, just like if I'm using Britannica. And so it's a perfectly reliable source for its intended purpose, to give you general background information to build on. So I tell them I will kill them if they cite Wikipedia or if they cite Encyclopedia Britannica. At least that's what I was taught growing up. That's just not appropriate source of information at this level of inquiry. Sorry, I digress. So Information Week has an article, When Wikis Work. Wikis work best in small groups, meaning less than 150. We've actually experimented in John Gallagher's class with up to 200, and it's gone reasonably well because we sort of split up into multiple sections, et cetera, et cetera. Wikis work best when we have a common language, both formal and informal. If your one group is speaking Japanese and the other is English, it becomes difficult to have a common platform for collaboration. But if we have a bunch of BC students who not only speak English, but speak freshman, we can really get some valuable communication going, and I can learn a lot as well. Non-controversial subjects. The LA Times tried to use a wiki to discuss, to create an editorial on the Iraq War. Did not go so well. Neither the war nor the wiki. Because what happened were people were coming in and correcting one another's opinions. There was no consensus that was able, and it was just sort of a war over the wiki. So the subjects need to be non-controversial or have a structure by which that controversy is going to be hashed out. Because we have the ability to write over one another. Semi-formal setting. I think that's important to say semi-formal. There needs to be some sort of structure. It can be an informal structure, but there needs to be some form of structure. But it can't be too structured. This is the struggle that I had working with Wikis, is the giving up control when I want control. And it's a painful process to let the students actively participate in the development of the class. And it's a scary process. But having done it now through 6 different modules of this class, every time I have let them create their own knowledge and collaborate together, the product is better than anything I could have come up with on my own. I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, there are too many of them. Let's harness that, and these are smart kids. Let's harness that knowledge, and I guide that to create valuable content. But I can't do that if I insist on having control over everything. So a semi-formal, and it's not going to happen if they don't know how they're going to be graded in the end. I need to have the structure, but not micromanage. Dynamic environment. I do happen to be fortunate to teach a class that's changing on a daily basis. Technology is always being updated. But I think even if we're talking about classics, even if we're talking about religion, even if we're talking about tried and true disciplines with long, rich histories, there are ways to create network dynamism and environmental dynamism that shouldn't be looked over, because students want to understand what's happening here and now. And then we have to have an environmental trust and respect. Only if these students respect me as a professor, I respect them, and they respect one another, is this going to work. So the question is, this is when wikis work best. Does this describe your classroom? It does mine. And I also recognize that it may not reflect yours, and it may not reflect it in the same ways, but these are sort of the touchstones I think that we would look for in a class if we wanted to use something like this. When is a wiki not a wiki? When it's a mashup. Now we're getting a little more complex, but we'll show you. I was sitting down with some of the people in the instructional design. I was talking to Jeannie one day, and we were sitting down, and they said, yeah, you think you're using a wiki, but you're really not using a wiki. You've really taken it one step beyond that and created a mashup, which brings sources of information from a number of different places into one website. And we'll look at some methods for doing this in terms of RSS, includes, and links. But basically where Web 2.0 is now is not only do I not have to do it myself, not only do my students not have to do it for us, but we can also look to the broader web and take the best of what's out there and include information from the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Economist, Time, and get that updated in real time on our website. We'll show you how that's going to work. The lesson, and this is what I teach my students about technology, is technology can always be a double-edged sword. It can both improve and deteriorate, it can help and it can hinder. And our job as users of technology is to maximize the value and minimize the downside. These tools are not about creating more professor-student interaction. I have plenty of professor-student interaction in my day. What I'm trying to do with these tools is to improve how much value I add in those interactions. Can the students get some information from another source before they come to me? But I have to say, I stole this from Adam Walsh in the New Media Institute. He was doing a lecture on some of his stuff. And I realized this is sort of how I approach things, but he was able to put it into this real nice pyramid. We work like a call center. Level 1, when students have a question, they are first expected to go to other students to help resolve it. And we create those opportunities through discussion boards, through help links. Then we have a TA. If they can't get it resolved through their fellow students, then they go to the TA. And the TA will help them out. Only if the TA cannot resolve it does the issue get bumped up to me. Because quite frankly, we create so much interaction down here that again, if I try to be hands-on in all of it, I'll be overwhelmed in the administrative details, and the value added will be lost as a result of this. And I have to not only create the opportunities for this, and reinforce these tiered interactions. If students come to me with inappropriate questions, I say, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you checked with your peers? Have you checked with the TA? If they haven't, I just say, go deal with them first. Because I have to create that culture, or it's never going to stick. And then the last slide, and then we're going to turn looking at the wiki itself. What was the movie, Field of Dreams? If you build it, they will come. That doesn't work with technology. Just because you present a cool tool, or what we think are cool tools, for students, doesn't mean they're going to use it, and doesn't mean they're going to use it in the right way. The value here lies in the collaborative environment that these Web 2.0 tools enable, not in the tools themselves. In my teaching evaluations, what's really interesting is that I do those, the special questions where I can sort of ask them questions I devise about the class, and I ask them, what do you like best and what do you like worst about the class? What would you change and what would you keep? As far as what would you change, or the wikis and the tools themselves, it's a 50-50 split. Half the students love them, half the students hate them. But what's interesting is all of them say it's the collaborative environment that we like best. And even some students recognize the sort of disconnect here. They say, I hate the wiki, but the wiki got to the collaboration, which was my favorite part, so go figure. And literally the students said, go figure. So it's not the tools. It's not the tools themselves, it's the environment that we can use these tools to create. And hopefully I'm learning to use these tools better, again, to maximize the positive and minimize the downside. Adopting Web 2.0 tools for me has been an evolutionary process. It's entirely different than where I started. And I'd encourage you, if you're going to experiment with some of these things, just experiment slow, start with some things, and build from there. Because what happens is students oftentimes use these tools in different ways than you or I intended. And that's not wrong. And we need to recognize the way they're using these tools to maximize the benefit. And these tools are changing and evolving. We're sort of in .com boom 2.0 now. There's a lot of innovation going on out there, and these tools are changing on a continuous basis. Use of Web 2.0 tools involves surrendering control of the wisdom of the crowd. Anybody read James Surowiecki's The Wisdom of the Crowd? It's worth a read. And basically it's a book that says, we are smarter than me. That as a group, under certain conditions, diversity, independence, decentralization, and aggregation, if our group has these things, as a collective, we as a group are going to be smarter than even the smartest individual. And flat out, I tell my students this on the first day when I introduce the wiki. I said, as a group, we can make it so that you are smarter than me alone. And that's the goal, is to harness this wisdom of crowds. And that's sort of one of my teaching goals of the class. So how do I use Web 2.0 in this class? And we'll look this hands-on. First, through content creation. Students find and summarize articles in the press. They're required to find 3 articles in the press that are relevant to what's going on, and they post them to the wiki. They find things I never would have found. What we do is we have individual and group projects. All my projects, all of my classwork, with the exception of my final exam, is geared towards creating content for the wiki. They don't turn in the papers to me, they post it to the Wiki. And then it will stay there for future classes to learn from this. I tell them, I think it's a shame that you turn in a paper to me and it sits in my drawer until time expires and then it's never seen again. Why not share some of this with your fellow students? Why not build upon this for future classes? We do a lot of peer review. As I said, they post their papers to the Wiki and then split them up, assign peer reviewers. They go and post comments to the Wiki. Then students have a week to evaluate those comments and change their papers accordingly before I evaluate them. I have found this to be an extremely valuable tool for two reasons. For two reasons. One, students, I noticed, do a pretty good job of picking out the basic stuff that's wrong with one of their colleagues' papers. Why do I need to go and say, hey, your spelling is wrong every time you use the word Web 2.0? When one of their colleagues can do it, and then it saves me that trouble. And what I've also seen is as they go review other people's work, they realize, oh my gosh, this person put a whole lot more effort and energy into it than I did. I need to improve. And they go back and do a better job because they see what their peers are doing. I mean, maybe this is a business school thing where we can put them against each other. But I found that it really raises the bar, that they want to perform well, but they oftentimes don't know what the standards are. And so they have this opportunity to revise. And what I did was I went back and checked. I could track which students revised and which students didn't. And the students that revised got, on average, about half a letter grade higher than the students that didn't. Worked pretty well. This is what I like best. The students develop all the exam questions for my exams. And that's all open source, and they have access to all of that. I will show you how that works in just a second. And it facilitates classroom interactions. IT-enabled social networks such as Facebook, we use this to create interactions in the class to get to know people that way. One more thing, and then we'll move on to the stuff. One important thing I have learned is that these tools are not a magic bullet. To get the students to use these tools the way I want them to, I have to provide them incentives. What are the incentives that students want? Grades. So the wiki, the grades very much come from participation on the wiki. And I use carrot and stick. Certain things are required. They're required to make 3 posts to the wiki. And that improves the quantity. The quality, I award bonus points for exceedingly high quality posts. And the rule is if I use it in a class, I give that student an extra bonus point off the top. The Web 2.0 video you saw in the beginning was from YouTube, contributed by a student to me for class. Great. And I award incentives, and the students are allowed to award incentives. For instance, I assign 4 reviewers for each paper, the peer reviewers. And they are allowed to identify which of the peer reviewers made the most valuable comments. And it's anonymous, but I can figure out who it is. And that person will get a bonus point. So not only they have to do it, but then we encourage them to have some high quality stuff too.
Jeannie, I realize I'm running late, but we will try and breeze through in the next 10 minutes. So here is the wiki, MIO 21, and this can be found like Web 0.5.
socialtext.net/CIM is computers and management. And I'll just sort of breeze through what we do here. Can you see it up there? Okay, yeah. So these are actually blogs or discussion boards that we can sort of synthesize into the main page. And we split them up. We have announcements, and these, I'm the only one who posts here.
And this is basically, hey, by the way, before next class, you better take care of this. Grades posted, Professor Kane's comments, blah, 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 blah. This one over here is class discussion. This is the one where they're required to post articles relevant to our discussion. What I found, and at the beginning of each class session, we just talk about, up on here, I'd ask them who posted what and tell me briefly what it's about. Usually, I taught at 9 o'clock at a 1:30 class. By 9 o'clock, I had one set of articles up here. By 1 o'clock or 1:30, the students had already contributed so much for that class's discussion, it was a brand new slate. Sometimes they contributed after I actually already started lecturing, which makes it even more confusing. But again, losing a little bit of control there, or surrendering it. So this is some of the, and then here's the main bulk of the page. We have course materials, we have class logs, we have the assignments, we have other tools that I use, and hopefully we'll have time to dig into that, and then RSS feeds. Anybody know what RSS feeds are? Yeah, pulling news items from remote sites. So in a sense, this RSS, what I've done, keep in mind this is a technology class, I've taken the Wall Street Journal technology feed. So students can go here, and these are all the most recent, today's news stories from Wall Street Journal. So we actually don't use a textbook for this class. Everything we find is linked on the web or comes through these RSS feeds. And we try to keep it to a minimum. So we have Wall Street Journal, Business Week, New York Times, Time, and Professor Gallagher's Week in Geek, which is his own blog post. So let's look at the course readings, and I'll show you what we've done. Okay, so here's our readings. Session 1, the world is flat. Session 5, Zara versus the Gap. Session 6, Dell. Let's go to Dell. So let me show you what I did. What I did the first time I started the wiki was I just took my paper syllabus. I said we will be reading these 2 articles, and these are the discussion questions I want you to think about. Now I gave one of my classes, your job assignment is to to build out this Dell site. And so then they started adding. We have additional articles, class notes and discussion, exam questions and key terms, Dell advertisements, Dell in the marketplace, Dell history. Students have all found and posted this information. They were graded on it, but then it lingers. And then, anybody heard of the tool Delicious? Delicious is a tagging tool. That when you find a good article, you tag it and say, hey, this article is about Dell, and I want to remember about it. Well, I have a feed, so when I go in and tag an article on Dell in Delicious myself, it automatically appears in this list of Dell articles, and it's automatically updated to the site. So students are required to read certain things, but if they want to know more about Dell, either I or students have tagged it so it's on this page. This is sort of our extra readings stuff that keeps it up to date.
Is this essentially like a bookmark?
Yeah.
So it's just, you can organize it more flexibly.
Well, it's a bookmark, but it's stored on a third-party computer. So then my website can access that information and say, oh yeah, put this up. Yeah, I mean, it's not really tough stuff. Another thing I do is a similar thing down here. One more. I'll show you 2 more things, and then let you browse on your own at a later time. I have Google Reader, which is another RSS reader. I can tag articles that I think are interesting in my own reading, and I just press one button, and it automatically updates to, it says Jerry shared items, because I couldn't make it say Professor Kane's. these are articles that I found interesting, just on a variety of subjects. And now I've also started blogging, which I've never done before. And I can get the feeds to my blogs to go right into the stuff. So my research interests are healthcare, IT, and Web 2.0. And now as I find things and I make blog posts on these areas, my students will be able to see what sort of stuff I'm commenting on. Last and probably most interesting, there are other tools here I'd love to talk about, but we're running a little low on time. Let's do two things. Groups. The groups are required to do a group project. And so let's go down to, I think LG was a decent one. So basically the groups, instead of doing and turning in a paper, they create a wiki site. And so there's the link, here's the information about LG, and if we're lucky, they've done feeds for it. And here what we see is these are the comments that people made. This is the peer review comments later on. That I assigned them to go make peer reviews. John Vodka wrote all of this about their group project, and the group was able to benefit from his comments. I mean, the nice thing about this, and part of me, the idealist side of me says they're collaborating and doing really good work and learning how to get knowledge from one another, and the pragmatic side to me says, and I don't have to do a darn thing. And so not only are they learning more, but I'm working less and being able to focus on the stuff that I think is more important for me to focus on as a faculty. Last thing I want to focus on is the exam questions. This is sort of where this whole thing started. Is I gave them, I had this idea. I'd already made up as my first term teaching, I'd come up with my exam, and I said, but tell you what, if you want to suggest a exam question, I'll consider putting it on the test. And you post it to, we're using Facebook at the time, you post it to Facebook. And one of the students said, well, can we post the question and the answer? Sure. As long as you know that I will make no guarantees that the answer is right. I mean, you don't go to me and say that, well, it says it on the wiki, that's not accurate, that's not okay. You got to know if it's right or wrong, but if you want to post the answers, that's fine. So within a week, and I said, tell you what, because I do believe in incentives. I said, if I use your question on the exam, I'll give you 5 bonus points on the exam. Sure, I mean, if they come up with a good question, I want them contributing. The first time I did it with 50 students, we had 150 questions. Every one of the questions that I had already put on the exam was contributed to that site. And the answers were pretty good. And in fact, they came up with better questions than I did. I said, I like that one better. And so what I've done, and I found that as I passed students walking around campus, they had printed out the exam question suggestion page, or walking around campus using it as a study guide. And I promised them, I said, based on the quality, I can take anywhere from 0 to 100% of the exam questions from this study guide. Ever since I've introduced it, I've taken probably 90%. The students like it because they know the exam questions. But I like it because, quite frankly, here are all the, and that's just terms. Quite frankly, they've suggested anything I've ever mentioned in class because of the incentives gets phrased into an exam question. And so, and I tell them, if you see a wrong answer, fix it. And they do. And now, 4 class sessions later, they have a very robust exam question, and what was Harris' most important discovery, and here it is, and here's the link, and such like that. So, I had some real moral dilemmas here. Am I, cheating as a teacher by providing this stuff up there? But I found that they studied more, they studied better, they had better recall, and frankly, I tried to fail them on the test. I tried to make it really, really hard. And if they learn this stuff, and I help them learn it. That's my goal as a professor. And so it changes things. It really creates more of a partnership between me and the students. It creates that partnership in ways that are sometimes uncomfortable. But I have found that in the end, using these tools has made it more fun for me, more fun for the students. We all learn more, because I learn more from them as well. And it just in general does a better job of knowledge creation and retention, which I think, at least is my goal as a professor. So that's, I'm way out of time at this point. Do we have time for questions, or we need to move on?
Time for 2 questions.
Yes.
I had 2 questions, but I'll put it in one. I noticed up there you have a wiki master.
Yes.
Who's that?
She is my TA.
Oh, okay. Can I ask a second question quick then? It's on Facebook.
Uh-huh.
I think students are astounded that faculty actually know what Facebook is, and that they see, they check it out, and they see all kinds of things. I don't really care about their social lives.
Right.
And to a great degree, although it is interesting.
Very
My question is, how did you create one of those groups or whatever on Facebook for your class?
I do, and it is a requirement in my class that you join the Facebook group. And invariably, there are 2 or 3 stricken faces when I make that announcement. And I make it very clear that if this information is out there, you better know that it's not only your friends that have access to it.
Yeah.
And you need to start understanding. And I'm hoping to teach them a valuable lesson doing that.
Usually in those classes, there are some students who lie back in the weeds and like to piggyback on the hard work of others. How much of that do you find, and how do you deal with?
I find less actually in this, because I can do a couple of things on the wikis. Let's see if I can find it. I've got to remember the. A really nice feature of this tool is as you log into the wiki, it tracks every page you view and or edit. And so in class, we may have somebody who's sitting in the back who may just be quiet, who may be paying attention. But with the wiki, I can see which people are viewing and participating on the wiki much more than others. The other thing I do in the group projects is I do give them the opportunity to evaluate one another as part of that. So, so both hardcore data provided by the wiki as well as peer evaluation. You know, I think it's consistent with what I'm doing.
It's cheap variation.
Oh yeah. Do I do what?
Do you use that in terms of grade?
Yes and no. Basically,
Let's say somebody only did 5, but maybe theirs were
really good. Here's what I'm looking at now. Basically, my class participation grades is a combination of the people I hear, you know, the typical ones who speak up, but then I go back and I just sort of sort it and say, but this person's participating a lot in the wiki. And if I go back and look and say, these are valuable posts, I'm going to give him full class participation support. I'm also now running a study on, I've got this and the Facebook data, and I'm going to run it against their final grades on the exam to see whether what type of wiki participation led to.
So maybe one more question.
Okay.
On any one entry, can you trace and change things?
Yes, and let me just show that. I know we're running late, but let's see. So this homepage has had 162 revisions, and you can go down and see who is making all the changes. Now, it's the main page, so it's mostly me.
Can you show what the change looks like?
Yep, and what you can do is, let's take 150 and compare it to 139. Compare revisions. It's a little hard in this format because of the graphic, the way the monitor is set up. But if we weren't on a projector, you could see 150 compared to 139, and then you scroll down. and it will highlight, ooh, this one is new. And so you just look at them side by side, and you can look at, and
The origin of Kane, I mean,
these are the differences. So this is pink and struck out. This has been eliminated from 130 to 150. Usually what happens is, for instance, what happened, I told the students I could do this as a don't vandalize the page because I will know who did it and I will kill you. But what has happened is some of these students go in and make really nice contributions and don't take credit for it. And I can go in and see what students really want. I can carry all revisions.
do you have people that go in and change the word law to the word law to get a wiki alteration?
Quite possibly. I mean, I can't control that, but I don't make it known that I have that sort of knowledge about what's going on the wiki. So it is a flawed proxy, that stuff. And so I use it as one of many. I'm not going to let a student who, I just use it as one source of information. They are. But again, the students where there's a big discrepancy, I tend to go follow up.